Welcome to It All Tandra. I am so excited. Today is so special. We have a special hot topic for you. Today I happen to be visiting my hometown, which is Wichita, Kansas. And I have a special guest that I am so excited to introduce to you. He actually came in from Washington, D.C. Our hot topic today is talking about aging family members and how to take care of them during a special time of aging in their lives. I want to introduce my guest. He is the utmost and exciting person that you'd ever want to meet. His name is Jacques, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself.
I'm Jacques. I originally was born in Wichita, Kansas, and moved to Washington, D.C. in the late 80s. Have been there for about 25 years. I do international missions, Central America, South America, and Africa. I also do community outreach, local jails and prisons, with a mentoring program with the anticipation of developing transitional housing and to provide and also provide support for incarcerated family members. I do sing at a cafe, Brazilian cafe, to help offset some of the costs of my expenditures for what I do outreach in my community, as well as to get the community involved.
Sounds like you're just a well-rounded person here, huh? You have many talents and many trades. So this is a person that you would also want to know because, I mean, he has very well connected. Okay, Carl, well, I'm glad that you're here and visiting with us. And what brings you to visit here in Wichita?
Actually, I'm here because of my mother, who is an aging individual, and she is currently 87 years old, but she suffers with dementia, Alzheimer's, and so I handle all of her assets and her estate, and was here to check on her and to do some things around her house because she's no longer to do those things for herself.
Wow, 87 years old. That's exciting. I mean, you know, most time, what do we say life expectancy is normally what, age 100? 99?
Well, people are living longer, and they have more advanced medications that keep people living longer. But as you probably are well aware, a number of people who are living longer are also being diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's, and it's becoming more common. Growing up, you would commonly hear people referred to as being senile, but that was kind of rare. But today, you know, more and more people are being diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It's a pretty devastating disease. It's very debilitating, and it requires quite an effort to address it and support seniors who are struggling with that.
Well, Carl's here today with us, and he's going to help us, or kind of tell us kind of the steps he has taken to actually prepare himself and his siblings, you know, for the process of his mother who is aging. So, Carl, can you tell us kind of some of the steps that you have taken during this process and how it's actually maybe even affect you and your siblings?
My mom was first diagnosed about 4 years ago. Prior to her diagnosis, my siblings had alerted me to the fact that they thought that there was something wrong, but wasn't quite sure what that was. And because they lived with her, they saw her on a daily basis and interacted with her, they were more observant about her lifestyle and things that had changed in her personality. So I had the opportunity of spending 4 days with her about 4 years ago around Mother's Day when she came out to my oldest daughter's graduation in Texas. And while we were there, I had a lot of interaction with her and began to take note of the things that my siblings had mentioned and saw that there was really a problem and wasn't sure what it was at that time. I hadn't really dealt with anyone who had Alzheimer's, the condition, at least not to my knowledge, but at that point I just began to inquire with coworkers and people in my circle, letting them know of some of my concerns that I saw when I was with my mother. And they, as I began to describe what I saw in my mom, they said that, sounds maybe like Alzheimer's. So that caused me to do some research. And of course, with today's technology, I always say, when in doubt, Google. So I went to Google and Googled Alzheimer's and began to look up, what some of the symptoms were.
Oh, okay.
And as I did that research, it just became so apparent that it looks like it was Alzheimer's was what we were dealing with her, and she hadn't been diagnosed as such, but based on the symptoms that I had saw exhibited with the time that I spent with her, and then what I found in Googling, it all lined up. And so at that point, I made arrangements to come home and to kind of evaluate my mother in her home environment, to kind of get a handle on some of her finances and her estate and see where things were. Make sure that wills were updated, power of attorney, to look at her accounting methods. And I knew that she had had some problems with her bank, and she had changed banks a couple of times. Because she had said that they had were messing up her deposits and things of that nature. After I got home and saw what was going on, I found that the problem wasn't the bank, but the problem was her, and she just wasn't aware. And so, of course, I looked more closely and discovered several things that were out of order. And my mother's always handled all of her own finances. She's always been business minded. But the errors that I saw in her finances and in her accounting clearly indicated that something was off and that something needed to be done. And so at that point, I had to assess the situation to see what further needed to happen at that point in time.
Okay. So would you say kind of like, with everything that you just said, so like being power of attorney, initiating someone to be more power of attorney would be kind of maybe one of the first steps that you would do to kind of make sure?
Yeah, typically in situations like this, of course, whether the aging individual has Alzheimer's or not, just the fact that they're aging, it's difficult for them to release some of their independence. And so I did speak with my mom about power of attorney, and she agreed initially to do that. So we did go see a lawyer to set that process in motion. Of course, that roughly can run anywhere from $150 to $250, and it's typically with about an hour time frame you can have that done. We got that taken care of, and then that gave me the ability to get access to her banking accounts and things like that, so that I could do further research.
Okay.
To see what was happening. My mother was consenting, at least initially, but that does not give you authority to have her diagnosed if you think that she may have Alzheimer's or dementia. I did go visit her doctor while I was during this time frame as well, and asked the doctor if he had noticed any abnormalities with her, and he said he thought that it saw a decline in her thinking processes and her mental ability. So I asked him, I thought, based on my observation, there were signs of dementia, Alzheimer's. And I said, what would be the process to determine that? He said she'd have to be tested, and that that was a test that she'd have to volunteer for.
Okay.
So it's nothing that you can force them to do, nothing that he could force her to do, but the individual has to be willing to be tested in order to determine whether or not Alzheimer's testing can occur.
Well, let me ask you this. I know just personally that I personally know of an experience of an aging senior. One of the things that we've kind of talked about is the process of driving. So at what point do you think that an aging senior should stop driving? After they hit a few cars, or I mean, what do you think is the process?
Clearly that would be an indication. but there's no definite age, if you will. It's just observing the individual and their driving habits. With my mom, she had a number of accidents, and pretty severe, though she hadn't injured herself necessarily, but she definitely had destroyed her vehicle. But the law, as far as getting one's license taken away, no one can enforce that. The individual, just like with getting diagnosed for dementia, Alzheimer's, the individual has to volunteer to give up their license. And unless they're willing to do that, you cannot take their license from them. So with my mom, we had not had a diagnosis yet, So there's nothing that we could really have done about her driving, even though she had had a number of accidents. And even with the power of attorney, that does not give one authority to have a senior person's license taken away from them.
Okay.
So power of attorney is very limited, and at any time that the individual who has given the power of attorney can have it revoked.
Okay.
So it's nothing that's permanent or necessarily as long lasting. But once securing the power of attorney, it did give me access to her accounts and information. And though the person should be willing for you to submit the power of attorney to their account holders, if they don't agree to it, then unless you do it behind their back, it's really not of any value, and it can't be enforced. Fortunately, in my situation, I knew that there was a problem, so I submitted the paperwork anyway without my mom's knowledge, so that we could get the process rolling, which really helped me a great deal. So I don't recommend that you do that unless you have a situation where you know that there's definitely a problem and it has to be addressed, and the individual's not willing to work with you to help them, because it's all about helping the aging senior.
Okay. Well, it sounds like your family is very close-knit, very loving and close family. I mean, how does your siblings take this? I mean, do you get a lot of cooperation from them, or do you kind of find that they're a little bit in denial with their mother, that they're maybe not really going, that, you know, that's not really the process that she's going through? Or, I mean, I know you mentioned that they've seen several different things that maybe happen with your mom, but I mean, overall, do you feel like that they are kind of willing and kind of collaborating with you to go through the process to make sure that all these things that you're saying are taken care of?
Well, it's been a challenge. There's quite a difference in age ranges with my siblings, and though I had done all the research, I provided that research to my siblings to make them aware, because awareness is the first step, being aware of that there is a problem.
Okay.
And then working together, and it takes the entire family unit to work together to handle the problem, because it can be quite taxing on any. It's taxing anyway, but to be taxing on any one individual, more so than without having the support of everybody chipping in. And though I did submit the information and make everybody aware, I wanted them to understand what we were dealing with, so that everybody could have the right mindset as we move forward, because it would take working together, collaborating, and supporting our mom, because after all, it was our mom.
Okay.
She's all of our mom. And so, but nonetheless, you do have to deal with family members who do, struggle with denial, because they live so close to the individual. They can't see that, they can't separate out the fact that this could really be, a legitimate issue that has to be addressed, and that there are certain things that are required to address it. Sometimes individuals take it personal, when it's not necessarily that at all, but it's a matter of the disease and how it works in the individual's mind. And so it can be quite a challenge trying to work with everyone to make them aware and to get the support needed to support the aging senior.
Do you find, like, now that you're going through the process, that your mother is somewhat in denial too, kind of about what's going on with her situation? Or
well, typically the aging senior is in denial, but again, it's all a part of the disease and how it works. So that, of course, makes it even more challenging. And so and even getting to the diagnosis, you have to get it diagnosed first. So we didn't really talk about that aspect of it. And then again, the individual who is having the issue has to volunteer to be diagnosed.
Okay.
So what I did is I spoke with my mom's doctor and asked him to speak with her, because she holds his opinion in high esteem. So I figured if anybody could convince her, he could, because she didn't want to. She doesn't like her children telling her anything. Again, we're dealing with independence. They're independents. They're on their own. They want to do what they want to do.
Away,
Right, and that is being taken away. It's threatened. And so I did speak with her doctor, and he did speak with her, and she said her response was, "Well, everybody forgets."
Yeah.
And so, and
well,
though there's some truth, there is truth to that. but the way that she was forgetting and some of the things that were happening with her was much more severe than what a normal person would go through. So, but at any rate, she didn't initially want to be take the test to be diagnosed because she didn't think anything was wrong with her. So yeah, denial definitely was there, and it wasn't until maybe about 6 months after that that she actually called and said she was willing to take the test just out of the blue.
Oh, okay.
And so, of course, there's a story behind that too. But,
many stories.
But the point is that she did consent to take the test, and of course, once she said that, I quickly moved on that.
Okay.
So that we could get her diagnosed before she changed her mind.
Okay.
And so, so I set up the appointment and got her in and got her tested, and the process took about 3 weeks.
Okay.
For the testing and results. Once the results came back, I came back to Wichita and met with the doctor, met with her and my sister, and the doctor discussed his findings.
Okay.
And sure enough, it was dementia, Alzheimer's.
Okay.
And she was in about stage 5. There's 7 stages.
Oh, wow.
And so she had already progressed from 1 up to 5. And the doctor was very thorough. He explained to her as well as to us about the disease and how it worked. He wanted her to understand about what was happening with her. But as he explained what was happening, again, she stayed in a state of denial because she didn't want to accept that. But he also recommended that she stop driving, that she stopped handling any finances, that she would allow someone else to help her with her medical aspect. And he instructed her that if she did not relinquish control, that he would give me authority or one of the family members authority to take control. And you'd have to go through the courts to do that. And so, so he presented me with the results of the test, a hard copy of the results, and as well as to her. And that was the information that I needed to take it to the next level. After our meeting, I discussed with my mom what needed to happen, and of course she was in denial and didn't want to do that. So what I ended up having to do is to take her to court.
Oh, okay.
Because there were a number of other issues happening. We had concerns about other individuals taking advantage of her and her finances. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a control over that so she wouldn't lose all that she'd worked for. And she wouldn't lose her property by folks taking advantage of her, because often folks will prey on seniors. And so it was a difficult thing, though. I did contacted a lawyer in Wichita and began the process of taking over her assets. We did have to go to court. Once we got to court, it was pretty much an open and shut case, because the county would rather the family member step in and take care of the senior than for them to have to step in and take care. So they're more on your side. So and I had no problem once I presented the findings from her neurologist that what she had been diagnosed with. He freely granted me guardianship as well as conservatorship. However, with conservatorship, he split that because I don't live in the area, and because that I'm sorry, with guardianship he split it because I don't live in the area, and that pertains to the medical aspect of things. And if she would need medical attention immediately, they needed to be able to get a hold of someone quickly. So my sister volunteered to be co-guardian to kind of handle the medical aspect of things. So, but that also gave us full authority to handle whatever we needed to handle concerning her, and it pulled her out of the equation so that we could make the decisions we needed to make on her behalf.
Well, let me ask you this question. For those individuals who are watching our show and are going maybe through the similar situation that you would, can you give me like 5 things that they would need to do kind of in order, to kind of get the process going? I mean, because a lot of the individuals that are going through this, without your, without you doing the research, you probably really wouldn't have really known what steps to take. But since you have done this research, maybe you can share that with those viewers who are watching us to kind of maybe give them an idea of what they can do, like if their mother or aging senior is going through the same situation.
Well, the first thing is, I would say, is talk about it. When you see things happening with the aging senior, talk about it with people in your circle.
Okay.
Because most likely somebody in your circle has gone through the same thing or is going through the same thing.
Okay.
And I found that in my circle, lots of people had already experienced what I was going through. And because they were able to share with me, and they say, well, it sounds like this. And I'd be like, oh, it does sound like that, you know. And then it gave me some direction so that I could even go Google and find out more about what I was dealing with.
Okay.
And so, again, Google is a great tool to use for anything, and anything that comes up, I always go to Google and find out, put in whatever I'm looking for, and it brings up lots of information. Of course, it can be overwhelming.
Okay.
So you do have to be careful with that. But again, having people in your own circle, bouncing things off of them, not being afraid or embarrassed to talk about whatever your senior is dealing with, because again, most likely somebody in your circle is already dealing with it or has dealt with it, and they can also provide input to give you some guidance about what you need to do.
Okay.
So don't be embarrassed, don't be ashamed. It happens.
Right.
It's a part of life. It's a part of life.
Yeah.
And so, and then secondly, if you think that's what it is, then talk with your aging seniors doctor. Get some feedback, because they see them on a pretty regular basis. Talk to other family members who see that individual to get more feedback.
Okay.
And then, and as well as communicate with your siblings about what's going on. Make sure that they're in the loop so that everybody is on the same page. Because if you've got everybody working together, it makes it a lot easier to deal with the situation. Too often, you've got individuals who would rather not participate and let another one handle it.
Right.
And whether there's financial participation or just support with the process and all that's involved with the process, it's so important to have a collaboration and interaction and communication.
Okay.
So that so you can make it through it, because it's a difficult time, and it's difficult for the aging senior as well as all of the individuals involved.
Yeah.
Being patient, takes a lot of patience with the aging senior as well as your siblings. And then, but to make sure that you get a diagnosis, an accurate diagnosis is very key.
It's a key.
And then, because you really can't go one way or the other until it's been diagnosed.
Okay.
Okay. So having my mom diagnosed really helped a great deal with help me to focus on what I needed to do to get help. It also, once we got that diagnosis, it gave us the power to make the changes that were needed for her without her consent.
Okay.
Because she wasn't consenting at all, and that's all a part of relinquishing that independence, which is hard to do for people.
Okay. Especially if they've had it so long.
Right.
So.
And it's a progression. It kind of, and you kind of grow into it, so you don't really realize it's happening.
Right.
Right. So that's why it's so important, again, to communicate with your siblings and those who are in that aging senior circle to better assess what's going on. And then don't be afraid to seize control, to step in, and don't allow the senior, even though they may be in denial and they're independent, to push you away because they need the help. And what's more important is helping them, because they don't know they need help. So that can be a deterrent for an individual if you get this resistance from the aging senior. But the bottom line is they need the help.
They need the help.
Yeah, I mean, because they're a danger to themselves as well as to others if you don't help them, and take the reins of that. Okay. And then once getting a diagnosis, again, that gives you the authority to take it to the next step if you have to take them to court. Hopefully you won't have to go through that. But you may have to do that.
Some families you have to.
You have to do that. Again, the whole issue is helping the aging senior because they can't help themselves and they don't understand. And then it's important to sit down as a family and discuss short-term and long-term goals.
Okay.
Because the disease is progressive, And though it could be mild initially, at some point it's going to be pretty devastating.
It's going to speed up pretty fast.
And it will speed up fast. But you have to have a process in place to accommodate that, so that you're not caught off guard, or that no particular individual is overwhelmed by the situation. It may require modifying the living environment of the individual, or it may require moving them from their current residence to a place that has some type of independent living initially, and then evolving from there to a dependent care situation. And so it can be a process. Looking at facilities, I've looked at a large range of different facilities, and of course, the more care the individual needs, the more expensive it can get. And it is expensive to have care for seniors. So there are a number of factors to consider. And I don't know that I necessarily chronicalized them.
But you hit the most important ones. And I think too, even during this whole process, it's not taking it personal, because as our aging seniors go, they get a little disgruntled, a little angry with those that are trying to help them. So most importantly, don't take it personal.
Right. And I've also found that they're more apt to allow a stranger or a neighbor to help them than their own family members, which can be frustrating.
It can be.
And the fact that they'll go to the other individual before they come to you when you're ready and available to help them. That can be very discouraging and very frustrating. But that's a part of the process. That's how it works. And so you have to understand that, not take it personal.
Okay. Real quickly, I know you mentioned a lot of many traits that you have, and I thank you so much for sharing all that information with myself and my viewers. And I know that during this process, it's hard. So we appreciate that. But you did mention that you have many talents, and one of them, did you say, was singing?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what? It would be really nice for Tell It All Tandra if you could kind of just do a little hum for us. And, this is Carl, and we want to make sure that, you end us with your presence. Can you give us a few tunes on something?
Yeah. I guess I should first interject into Global Outreach Network. And the purpose of it is to help the poor, to help the incarcerated and incarcerated family members. That entails visiting jails, local and federal prisons, and in helping out their family members. Also, we do mentoring. I work with a bunch of bikers who also participate in the program. And one of the things that I do to help generate financial support is to sing in a Brazilian cafe. And so on the weekends, I do sing at a cafe in my area regularly. And one of the songs that I sing is Falling in Love with Jesus. 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 It's the best thing I ever done.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. Again, we want to thank our filming location, which was gave us the opportunity to let us come in and be able to film our show today. Her name is Alice Thomas, and she was so gracious enough to let us come in and film our show. But also, she has done a beautiful flower arrangements that I also want to take a look at. It's done by a shop called Personalized Gifts, and she is just so talented, so I definitely want to make sure that I recognize her. Again, we're going to be filming while we're here in my hometown, which is Wichita, Kansas, so you're going to be able to see a lot of more different things here in Kansas. I know that the famous tale of Kansas is Dorothy, or Click Your Heels and Let's Go Back Home. But it's much more than that to Wichita, Kansas. So we're going to be able to, while we're here filming or on vacation, we're going to show you some different parts of our hometown. So stay tuned. Again, visit us on Facebook, and also email us at www.tellitalltandra01@gmail.com. Thank you, and good day.